My first experience with La Boheme, I was 20 years old, maybe 19, and I was in college in my undergraduate, and I had taken an interim trip to New York to work for a month at a small opera company, and I just by chance decided I was going to go to the Met for the very first time in my life. And it turned out it was a day, it was horribly blizzarding in New York, and I just showed up expecting to buy a standing room ticket, and it turned out that very few of the audience had showed up that night, so here I had bought like a $10 standing room ticket, and I found myself in probably the orchestra 15th, 20th row or something, because I had snuck down. And that was the very first time I saw La Boheme, and I was very green with opera and didn't know much about it, and I was completely enthralled and moved to tears in one of my first opera experiences, and I couldn't believe it was at the Met. And to be honest with you, I don't even recall who the singers were. I'm sure somewhere in my archives I've taken a brochure and kept it, but it's been years since I've looked at it. So that was my first experience with Boheme. And the next time I returned to it was in college. I played the role of Musetta, and still love the opera very much. I remember I had this wonderful Chanel suit that they had put me in because Musetta is very decked out when she makes her big entrance in Act 2. And after that, my next experience was singing Mimi, and to be honest with you, I've never gone back to Musetta. I've always sung Mimi. I've been asked to sing Mimi many times. I've sung it maybe over 60 performances, maybe almost 10 productions of it. I've done it a lot, including the Baz Luhrmann La Boheme that took place on Broadway, and then they took it to LA. I did that as well. And it's an opera that I love. It was one of my first introductions into opera and into Puccini for that matter. And I think it's wonderful for a first-time opera goer as well as someone who's a seasoned opera veteran as well. Yes, Mimi is an incredibly emotional role, and probably deals with some subject matter that a lot of people have experienced in life, death and the breakup, separating from a loved one. It is difficult to not get too involved to the point where you can't sing, and there's also a lot of coughing involved since Mimi is dying of tuberculosis, and coughing's not so great on the vocal cords. That's always a trick, to find a way to cough and still be able to sing this beautiful aria that follows a huge coughing fit. But I try to convey that a lot more with like a physicalness of my body and detach my brain a little bit so that I don't have to compromise performance so the audience doesn't enjoy it. If you've never been to an opera before, it's unlike anything you've seen on TV or recordings. I think, in some ways, in my opinion, I think the recording industry does a disservice to opera, because I remember my first time at the opera, I didn't really know much about it. When I came to music from the radio, from pop music, and from singing in church and singing in high school, and I really didn't discover opera until my later years in my undergraduate degree. And my first time at the opera, I remember sitting there. It was The Barber of Seville, which is very famous. You know, it's got that dun dun da 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 da, which is from Bugs Bunny. And I had no idea when I showed up that that's what it was, because I was so fresh and new to opera. But when the first singer opened their mouth, it was incredibly amazing to hear this voice come soaring over this huge orchestra in the pit, unmiked, and there's just something. There's nothing like it in the world, and the recordings don't do justice to it. It's almost like, I don't know, I guess if you do yoga or something, if you've ever done yoga and the om that you do in yoga and how it vibrates in your body, that's kind of the feeling that I got from actually sitting in the audience hearing these singers sing. It's almost like you have this beautiful sound of the orchestra kind of washing over you, and then you have this vibration of a voice vibrating through your body as well as through the singer on stage. And I don't think that's anything you could experience anywhere else. I stayed in Portland for about 2 days, and I came in late last night, and I think the next morning I got up. I like to run, and I ran outside, and I immediately fell in love with the city. It's perfect. I love to be in a city where you can be walking distance from shops and restaurants and life and outdoors and nature, and it's all right there. And I love that about it. And we can walk from our hotel to the Opera Center, so this is definitely a city for me.